Thanks for clicking in. Is there a difference between a tenderloin that has been properly trimmed, marinated, and cooked to 145 degrees Fahrenheit to, say, a pork tenderloin that wasn't? That's the experiment I'll be doing today. And also stay tuned for the end of the video where I'm going to share the results of my experiment. But I'm also going to be sharing some tips so you know how to grill a pork tenderloin perfectly every time. Pork tenderloin is very lean, but you could put some amazing flavors. Now you could cook this on the stove, but since this is awesome, hot and fast, it's perfect for grilling. Here are the two tenderloins I'll be cooking today. Don't mistake these with the pork loin. They are different sizes, coming from a different part of the pig, and have their differences on how you should prepare them. But once you're sure you have a pork tenderloin, let's prep it up. For the first one, I'm going to keep it simple. In fact, I'm doing a big no-no in the cooking world, and I'm not trimming off any of the silver skin. I'm also not putting too much thought into the seasoning either. I'm dropping in a barbecue seasoning. Why? It's part of my experiment, so bear with me. Once I make sure all the sides are coated evenly, I'll go ahead and put it off to the side. Here's the second tenderloin I'll be cooking. As you can see, there's some silver skin here which I'm going to trim off, which brings us to our first tip. Tip number 1, trim your pork tenderloin. I'll go ahead and trim off any excess fat or silver skin with a sharp knife. Removing it allows for better bites. Pork tenderloin is a very tender cut, so you don't have to focus in on cooking for tenderness. Instead, focus in on the flavor. Which brings me to tip number 2, experiment with the flavors. Pork tenderloin is an open canvas to any flavorings you want, so I'll be making a marinade for the second tenderloin. For the marinade, I'll be using 1 tablespoon of parsley, 1 tablespoon of thyme, about 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of lemon zest, 1 tablespoon of chopped green onion, 4 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. I'll see if it needs a little bit more later. 2 tablespoons of honey, 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, half a teaspoon of pepper flakes, 2 cloves of garlic, minced or pressed. And let's mix. Oops, I forgot the pepper. Let's do about 1 teaspoon of pepper. Also, it does look like it needs a little bit more soy sauce, so let's add another splash of it and mix again. Placing your pork tenderloin into a Ziploc bag and drop in your marinade. Let it marinate from the fridge for a minimum of 3 hours. I suggest not to do it overnight unless the plan is to cook it first thing in the morning. If cooking during the week, prepare the marinade the night before, and in the morning, drop the marinade into the Ziploc bag and let it marinate during the day so it'll be ready for you to cook for dinner. Let's prep this grill. I'm going to be using the Weber kettle. The plan here is first to sear the meat and then place over to the indirect side and let it come up to temperature. I'm setting for a hot and fast cook. Here's a quick tip to know exactly how much charcoal these 2 Weber baskets hold. First, fill the 2 baskets. Next, dump them to the big chimney. It's about half full. Next, pour over the small chimney. The chimney is overfilled, but once it burns down, it'll come down a bit. Let's heat up a small chimney of charcoal. I'm using a Weber cube to start it. Once it gets nice and hot and the majority of it has ashed over, drop the lit charcoals across both baskets. Let's place in our grates and let's sear these pork tenderloins. Turn around and make sure you sear all sides. Once you're happy with the sear, let's separate the baskets so our indirect zone is right in the middle. Since one of the tenderloins is smaller than the other, it'll cook faster. Be sure to probe the meat in the thickest part of the meat, so we can monitor internal temperatures. And let's cover. As part of this experiment, I'm cooking one of them to a higher temperature, but for our marinated tenderloin, our target temperature is 145 degrees. And that brings us up to our third tip. Don't overcook your pork tenderloin. I know some people like to take pork to 160, but nowadays 145 degrees Fahrenheit is safe with a minimum of 3 minutes rest time. It'll end up juicier and more tender. But don't take my word for it. According to the USDA website, Cooking Whole Cuts of Pork, USDA has lowered the recommended safe cooking temperature for whole cuts of pork from 160 degrees Fahrenheit to 145 degrees Fahrenheit with the addition of a 3-minute rest time. Now, if you don't live in the US and live internationally, then follow the food safety guidelines of your country and follow those temperatures they advise. As expected, the smaller tenderloin cooked a lot faster than the second one. But as part of this experiment, I ended up cooking it a little bit further. I took this out at 155 degrees. For the second tenderloin, the one I marinated, it's not ready yet, but it's getting close. I'll go ahead and cover and let it cook for a couple more minutes. Alright, the second tenderloin, the one I marinated, is temping at 145 degrees. I'll go ahead and remove and wrap it and let it rest. Once your pork tenderloin is cooked to perfection, let's remove and rest. It's important to let it rest before slicing. This will allow the juices to redistribute and make the meat more tender and juicy. You'll want to rest it for the minimum of 5 minutes. Now this is kind of a global tip because you should already be letting your meat rest no matter what you're cooking. Just get into the habit of it. For plating, I'm going to grill up some vegetables while the two tenderloins rest. But first, I'll go ahead and put the two Weber baskets closer together to create another sear zone for these vegetables. Squash, zucchini, and some sweet peppers are on the menu. I've cut them into medallions and add a little bit of salt, pepper, and garlic. Grilling vegetables is quick and easy, and it makes for great sides. Once the pork tenderloins have rested, place one of the tenderloins on the cutting board for slicing. This is the barbecue one, which I took to 155 degrees and I did not marinate or trimmed. Let's plate it up. This is the second tenderloin that I marinated. I took it to a perfect 145 degrees and it's the one that I trimmed off the silver skin. Let's plate them both up. As mentioned, I'm plating it with some grilled vegetables. The thumbnail's gonna look fantastic. I love plating food this way. A nice colorful side and some pork tenderloins cooked to perfection. So what are the results of the experiment? Now they were both delicious. The untrimmed, unmarinated pork tenderloin that was slightly overcooked, barbecue time, just didn't have that clean bite or even was that flavorful. The one I properly trimmed and marinated was way better. That's the best one. So my advice for pork tenderloin, take the extra steps to trim, marinate, and make sure you nail down that temperature. But following this video, you can achieve a perfectly grilled pork tenderloin every single time. Looking for more cooks? Be sure to check out the following video up here. YouTube is recommending it, so you know it's gotta be good.